Okay.
Hola amigos, Jessica Liaga Froki. El día de hoy, como quedamos, la semana del consumidor. ¿Cómo hacemos para protegernos? Y esa es una pregunta que todos los latinos tenemos. Y lo que el día de hoy van a aprender es a conocer quiénes, cómo y cuándo pueden ustedes acceder a hacer su reclamo. Hay muchas instituciones, tanto gubernamentales, estatales y federales, para que eso pase. Recuerden, no necesitas probar ningún tipo de documentación, simplemente eres un consumidor que paga impuestos y que tiene todo el derecho de ser escuchado. Y el día de hoy tenemos a 3 invitados, pero uno de ellos, el que vamos a empezar, y obviamente les vamos a dar la bienvenida en español, tenemos a Jason Adler. Él es el director adjunto de la Oficina Regional del Medio Oeste de la Comisión Federal de Comercio en Chicago. Minnesota, pues prácticamente es una subdivisión de Chicago. Ellos manejan todas las investigaciones y las acciones que aplican relacionadas a las prácticas comerciales desleales y engañosas. Escuchen bien esa palabra, porque sabemos que en nuestra comunidad existe todo el tiempo eso, a pesar que están disfrazados de marketing, te ayudo o lo hago por la comunidad. El día de hoy aprenderán esas cosas. Y bienvenidos, Jason, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Yes, well, I have this question for you. Yeah, I told everybody about the consumer rights. They have how any consumer in the United States, they are able to make a complaint. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't understand how they can make the complaint until they suffer the loss or they don't know where. Or some people, they actually make the complaint, but nothing happened. Explain to us what is the process.
So we've actually, I'm happy to announce, have just made the process even easier. So the Federal Trade Commission, where I work, is the nation's consumer protection agency, and we collect complaints. We collect reports from consumers all over the country, and our message constantly is, please, please, please report to us when you. If you encounter a scam or another bad business practice. This year, or actually late last year, we launched a website called reportfraud.ftc.gov. It's also available in Spanish. If you go to the website, you can quickly change the language to Spanish as well. If you go there, it will walk you through the complaint process. It's 3 or 4 steps. A couple of things that we like to make sure that people know. You don't have to have every piece of information about a bad business practice. Maybe you know the company's name, maybe you don't. Maybe you know the phone number and nothing else. Any information that you have about the practice is helpful. The other thing that we like to note is that you don't have to provide a lot of information about yourself. It's helpful if you do, because we rely on those complaints to guide our law enforcement efforts and our outreach to consumers in events like these. But any information that you're willing to provide is helpful. But if you're not comfortable, if you're reporting for a friend, that's okay too. The more reports we get, the better.
Perfect. Now, él lo que dice, obviamente, a los que nos están escuchando en español es, mientras más información y mientras más pronto hagamos el reclamo es mucho mejor. No tengan miedo. Cualquier información que involucre ese reclamo, háganlo. Es muy importante que lo hagan, porque si no lo hacen, y siempre lo repetimos, va a haber gente que va a seguir haciendo, esa misma gente va a seguir engañando a otras personas y más gente va a ser siendo estafada. Y la pregunta que le voy a hacer ahora es, ¿cómo una persona puede ser protegida, no? ¿Cómo sabemos, por ejemplo, si el fraude fue hecho, por ejemplo, en efectivo, cómo podemos hacer ese reclamo? My next question for you, Jason, is what about if the fraud is being cash? You know, in my community, we receive and we make transaction in cash. If the transaction is in cash, how you can basically prove you lost money?
So when you report to us, you don't need to prove that you've lost money. You can tell us that you have, and that's fine. And if you can tell us how much money you've lost, that's even better. It doesn't need to be by credit card. It doesn't need to be by debit card. we commonly get complaints from consumers about scammers requesting cash. You won't be surprised to hear that a lot of scammers request cash in particular because it is so hard to trace and so hard to track. But that doesn't stop us from trying to pursue those companies and get that money back to you.
Perfect. Now, the second question for you is a lot of our consumers asking is, what about the misleading? Misleading happen a lot, most for purchase of cars. You know, they offer something else, and when you realize basically it's a lie, it's nothing you can do because we have the lemon law and you cannot return the car, and that is a really, really sad situation. What is a good advice for that?
Sure. So I guess what I would say is, we talk a lot about scams, and scams, I think, most often take the form of someone deliberately trying to trick you to take your money or your personal information. But that's not all that we look at. Our jurisdiction includes is a bit broader. It includes any deceptive or unfair practice, which really just means anytime someone lies to you or harms you in some way. And that harm can be a loss of money. It can be a loss of your personal information. So we really do have a very wide view on what can count as a bad business practice. You reporting to us or telling your friends and family to report that to us, again, that helps us know that a company is engaged in this bad practice and helps us achieve our primary goal, which is to stop that practice, to prevent the company from ever engaging it again, and getting the money back to consumers. Perfect.
Now, I hear you have a lot of cases about, basically the Federal Commission won a lot of cases against dealers, and especially in South. Especially I remember this case in Texas, Florida, California.
Yeah.
Estoy hablando sobre los casos que ganó el Federal Trade Commission contra estos dealers que el blanco de sus estafas eran los latinos, y él nos va a explicar más o menos de cómo sucedió. Can you explain to us how that kind of settlement came true and how these bad dealers was able to pay the crimes?
Sure. So, and I'll give you a specific example. Last year, we announced a settlement against a dealer called Bronx Honda, located in the Bronx in New York. And the case was about this auto dealer charging more money deliberately to Latino and African-American consumers than white consumers and other consumers. So the dealer, you would arrive at the car dealer, you don't have financing and you need to finance your purchase of the vehicle. And a lot of times these auto dealers will offer what's called dealer assisted financing. And so they may offer terms to you. What they don't tell you, and what a lot of consumers don't know, is that those dealers also earn a markup. So they earn a certain amount on every loan that they help arrange. And that's pure profit for the dealer. And they often don't tell you how much that markup is. And so what happened to the people who went to this dealer in the Bronx is consumers, Latino consumers, would receive higher markups than other consumers. And so the settlement that we announced, it put a stop to that practice. It also required the dealer to implement what's called a fair lending program. So they have to have certain policies in place to make sure that their employees are not discriminating against consumers going forward. And then we also, of course, were able to obtain money back to consumers, to put that money back in consumers' pockets.
In that case, how the Federal Trade Commission was able to catch them? Because we know in Minnesota, that happened all the time.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, it's challenging, and depending on the case, it's even more challenging. But we get we're alerted to potential violations of the law in a number of ways. I will say that the consumer reports are the primary. We just last year, the FTC received 4.7 million reports from consumers across the country. And so that gives you a sense of the volume there. I actually looked beforehand. Our report intake system, we don't ask consumers to identify race or ethnicity. But we do look at that as a factor to make sure that we're targeting our efforts appropriately. And the way that we do it is we compare it to census data, and we look at how consumers are affected in predominantly Latino neighborhoods, for example. And so just looking at that data, over the past 5 years, the FTC has received over 500,000 reports from Latino consumers, or for consumers who live in these predominantly Latino neighborhoods. And so that I can't emphasize enough how important that is a source for us. We also occasionally will get information from informants. These are former employees from an auto dealer who speak up. That's something that often, especially in these auto cases, it's a former finance manager or a former salesperson who left the company and then contacts us and tells us, here's the practice they're engaged in. So those are two ways that can combine to create a lot of good cases.
Y estamos hablando sobre, y seguimos hablando sobre el problema de los fraudes, y uno de los fraudes más grandes que existe en la comunidad latina, sabemos todos, son los fraudes de las prácticas engañosas de algunos dealers que de alguna forma están no solamente engañando, sino poniendo dificultades económicas a nuestras familias. Estamos hablando sobre un caso en particular. El Federal Trade Commission ha ganado casos contra estos dealers. Él está explicando que lo más importante es tratar de discutirlo. Hay un caso muy particular de un dealer que cobraba un interés muy alto, porque a los que no saben, los dealers ganan extra por los intereses, y se van a dar cuenta que muchos intereses son muchos más altos. Lo que ellos se dieron cuenta es que estaban cargándole más intereses a los latinos, y a la gente afroamericana pudieron detectar y empezaron todo este proceso contra estas compañías que andan por ahí y que están perjudicando a la comunidad. La pregunta que le hice es cómo se dieron cuenta. Pues por muchos factores, la gente empezó a reclamar, llevaban un data de por qué había tantos reclamos de la misma compañía. Y segundo, que los mismos empleados que saben que se están cometiendo actos dolosos, actos criminales contra la comunidad, ellos se encargaron de hacer los reportes. Jason, the next question I have for you, because we are so intrigued about this fraud in the Latinos, in the African American community, and about the car loans, because the car loan has become a huge problem for all these communities. But my question, I am still intrigued when you say, how, if I am a consumer, if I know the interest they are charging me is super higher, and I know that is wrong, I feel it's wrong because I don't know how I know it's right, but I feel something is wrong. You thinking it's just because make the complaint against the dealer, and the dealer through the bank, they start the investigation regarding the score, or how the Federal Trade Commission works?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that's often, especially, this happens in a lot of cases, but especially in cases involving auto dealers, where the terms of your financing can be so confusing and so opaque. I mean, we constantly find that consumers find these transactions to be overwhelming. It is not unusual to walk away from a transaction like that and think, something wasn't right there. I don't think that I got what I bargained for. And it's certainly more helpful if you can explain exactly how it happened and exactly the amount of money that you were lost, but you don't have to. If you walk away from a transaction thinking, I don't think I got what I expected, or I think that there was something wrong there, it is still helpful for you to report that to us. Because what happens is, you may just be one person making that report, but it is very likely if you walked away having that feeling, other people are going to too. And so those complaints add up, and they tell us, this is a company that we need to look into.
Okay. Now, when most of the cases, we encourage our clients to make the complaint with the Federal Trade Commission and the Attorney General. But unfortunately, sometimes in the Attorney General, we just stuck there because it's nothing they can do, or they create the data. But the enforcement come basically or the protection come basically from the Federal Trade Commission. It is why you try to say?
Yeah. So the way that the Federal Trade Commission addresses law violations is typically in two kind of large ways. One is through an enforcement action. So one is through a case, either in federal court or in the commission itself, where we spend a lot of time investigating. We have attorneys and investigators on staff who can spend a lot of time building evidence for that case. The other way is through outreach, and there we're really talking about prevention. We like to alert people to potential scams and potential bad business practices and instruct them how to avoid it. There are other agencies and other groups throughout the country that will work on these things in a sort of a more micro level. And so the recommendation to report to the Attorney General's office is a good one. Consumers will often find, too, that if they report to the Better Business Bureau, that is a group that is one of their purposes is to mediate disputes. And that means go directly to the company and try to seek a resolution and then get money back to the consumer more quickly on an individual level. Because we work on a larger scale, it can take a bit more time. And so what I like to tell people is it doesn't hurt to report to multiple sources. Go to the Better Business Bureau, go to the Attorney General's office, and please come to us and let us know.
Perfecto. Él lo que dice es que seguir reclamando es muy importante. El abogado general es un mediador que puede tomar mucha consideración y va directamente para recuperar el dinero perdido de esos consumidores. El Federal Trade Commission actúa a un nivel federal. Se puede demorar, pero es muy importante que lo hagan porque ellos crean casos mucho más importantes y más fuertes. Jason, I will keep talking about this issue with the car loans because it's bothered me. It's bothered me because my community is losing money every single day. It's hurting the financial life of my community. I see a lot of people be sent to the court because they could not get an attorney. They lost the judgment, and it's a lot of issues. But the problem is not just the dealership. The problem is also the subprime lending. And we talk about these big companies. They are talking about these big companies. They say, hey, I am basically in charge of the loan. You owe me the money, not the dealer. But we see these big companies, when we start making any kind of dispute in the credit report, because most of the time they make the wrong report. And basically what they try to do, they mark that credit report with our clients. In a lot of our clients, they lost a lot of points. How the consumer is being protected for this kind of basically retaliation action from these lenders. And I am talking about specifically the subprimes. There is 2 or 3 banks nationwide. They have a lot of issues in that they aggressive practices hurting the community.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely a focus of ours. We talk about the dealers specifically, but we are more interested in preventing these practices in the auto marketplace generally. And so you're right that includes that can include lenders. It can also include debt collectors who third-party debt collectors who may pursue a consumer after they've completed an auto transaction. I think that the biggest thing that I would advise here is if you've been through an auto transaction, if you've gotten a call from a debt collector and you're not quite sure what to do about it, if you've gotten a call from the lender, you're not quite sure what to do about it. The FTC has resources that are tailored to each of those situations. And so our website, consumer.ftc.gov or consumidor.ftc.gov, has English and Spanish language guidance about what consumers can do in each of those situations and really what they should expect. Because that's a big piece of this, is you want to know that the person who's calling you or writing you a letter, that you can really trust the person on the other end of that line. And so the FTC guidance here will help you know what's typical, what are my rights, and how can I deal with this situation.
Now, the other issue we have too with our clients is when they make the complaint with the Federal Trade Commission, the creditors of the companies, they answer back and they say, okay, they answer whatever they want, but they never resolve anything, and the case is closed. What you can do in that kind of cases? They can reopen.
You're talking about a situation where the company
Yes.
responds in the case. I see.
Yes. The answer basically say, well, I will take an example. They probably made the wrong. They mark your account and your credit report wrongly or inaccurate or incomplete, and you make your dispute. And basically they answer, oh, everything is right, and that's it, and it's closed. Then there is any way the Federal Trade Commission can make that investigation? Because we have even a case. I remember one of the creditors, they answer saying, we cannot answer because you speak Spanish. We don't speak Spanish. And I was like, are you kidding me? This consumer got the business for the Spanish salesperson, the billing for the Spanish version, and now is, I will say, in the complaint department, and now you don't want to talk to them because your department doesn't speak Spanish. How you can do that?
Yeah, I mean that situation sounds pretty awful, and I'll say that one of the things that we do see in our casework is the many ways in which some companies can target Latino consumers, can target Spanish-speaking consumers, and the sort of barriers that a lot of Latino consumers face in dealing with these transactions. And so it's discouraging to hear that you also have that on the other side. You've completed the transaction and then are dealing with that issue on your credit report. I would say two things. One is, of course, report it to us. That is absolutely something that we would be interested in and potentially would pursue as an enforcement action. The second, and perhaps more importantly, is on the website I mentioned, on consumidor.ftc.gov. We have guidance for consumers about correcting errors on credit reports. And one of the things that I find particularly useful there is we have a sample dispute letter. And so there's a pre-written letter that you can use to challenge an error on your credit report. If that doesn't work, if you've used the FTC's pre-written letter and you're still having issues on your credit report, and that's just something that will make it all the more interesting to us. You followed all of the recommendations that are out there and still have this problem. Please let us know if that's the case.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. And we have also our another guest. Okay. Basically, from the Attorney General. Thank you so much. Is the Consumer Protections Week, and we are going to invite him in our group. Let me see here. Hello, Kyle. ¿Tú hablas español?
Sí, yo hablo español.
Oh, Gerardo, sorry. No, don't worry. Pero, Gerardo, ¿usted habla español? Y por algún motivo no te puedo ver en stage. Déjame ver. Estoy escuchándote, pero no te puedo ver. Permíteme. Oh, perfecto. Okay. Perfecto. Entonces, estamos hablando sobre los derechos de los consumidores como un consumidor, y lo que la idea es enseñarles, y no solamente enseñarles, sino hacer que hagan su reclamo, porque ese es uno de los problemas que tenemos los latinos. Tenemos miedo primero de reclamar, no sabemos cómo hacerlo, y no sabemos dónde hacerlo. Y espero que tú nos puedas mostrar dónde, cómo y cuándo. Y lo más importante, esto aplica a todos los consumidores. Estamos hablando a la gente que paga sus impuestos y que tiene ITIN y que dice, tengo terror de hacer mi reclamo porque va a haber una retaliation contra mí. ¿Qué consejos nos puedes dar? Por supuesto, si nos ayudas con eso, por favor. Porque tenemos nuestros clientes, la gente que nos está siguiendo es bilingüe, pero encantadísimas, por favor, porque estamos transfiriendo a todos los grupos en español. Perfecto. Y es un tema que está entrando mucho, ¿verdad, Gerardo? Porque me imagino, para la gente que me está escuchando, otra vez es la semana del consumidor. Hay que protegernos. Y la forma como tenemos para protegernos es a través del Federal Trade Commission, a través del abogado general, que ellos nos van a ayudar a poder, primero, mediar. El abogado general está como un mediador. Afortunadamente, tenemos a un abogado general en el estado que ha escuchado las propuestas de muchos activistas para que primero tengan más gente que hable español, puedan entender y también se puede hacer los reclamos en español en la página web. Es completamente fácil, incluso pueden llamar si se les hace un poco difícil. Tenemos al Federal Trade Commission que también tiene los reclamos en español, también pueden llamar por teléfono. Recuerden, se demora un poquito, pero no tengan el temor de que va a pasar. Que se va a dar un reclamo. Es muy importante que hagan el reclamo. Si no hay reclamos de por medio, pues siempre va a seguir existiendo este tipo de abusos que está pasando todo el tiempo con la comunidad latina. Yo creo que los compañeros de Hispanic Solutions van a poner en las pantallas las links para el abogado general, los links para el Federal Trade Commission y ellos nos puedan orientar con más información. Muchísimas gracias, Gerardo, porque creo que tenemos un poco de problemas con tu audio. Yo te escucho, pero aparentemente las redes sociales no te están escuchando, me están mandando un mensaje. Y quería invitar también yo creo que 𝐤𝐬𝐻𝐿 está con nosotros.
Sí.
Ok. 𝐤𝐬𝐻𝐿, bienvenido. Gracias por acompañarnos. Welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Bueno, es un placer estar aquí. Lamento que llegamos un poco tarde, pero ya estamos.
No te preocupes porque Jason nos ayudó con un montón de información. Jason, he gave a lot of information and was super good. 𝐤𝐬𝐻𝐿, gracias porque ustedes tienen el compromiso de estar hablando en nuestro idioma y eso es bien importante para que la gente primero se sienta cómoda y segundo, un tema que estamos hablando y hablamos con Jason es un problema que está sucediendo mucho en la comunidad, que es el problema de los préstamos de los carros o la venta de los carros con una publicidad engañosa, ¿no? Y te dicen, acá aplica cualquiera, con papeles, sin papeles, pero a la hora de la hora te vienen con unos intereses sumamente altos. No, ni siquiera ves los contratos porque lo firman directamente los propios compradores o los propios vendedores. ¿Cómo un consumidor latino, un consumidor, se puede proteger de este tipo de accionares y cómo denunciarlo? Porque al ser engañoso, y pasa muchas veces, al momento que la gente llega a ese tipo de dealers, porque no son todos, les dicen no hay problema, les tratan de maravillas, les dicen que van a recibir el mejor servicio. Una vez que la gente dejó el dealer y se dan cuenta de que fue un engaño, ya sea porque el interés es sumamente alto o el precio que estaban pagando era bastante alto, porque en 7 días le llegan los documentos del banco, que es la cantidad real, porque jamás le mostraron los documentos. Cuando regresan ya el vendedor ni le quiere ni atender y en muchas oportunidades les han hasta amenazado en que van a tomar acciones si el comprador le sigue reclamando. ¿Qué acciones debería tomar un consumidor, sobre todo un consumidor latino, que es lo que queremos hablar el día de hoy?
Ok. Bueno, una cosa importante que ellos deben saber es que no tienen que saber la ley. Yo no sé la ley, pero yo trabajo cada día en la ley. Y si alguien está en una situación difícil, compraron un coche y no es lo que esperaban o vean que fueron cobrados demasiado, ellos deben primero llamar a nosotros, porque hay gente como yo y Gerardo que estamos aquí. Espero que los demás podrían escucharle porque ofreció información importante. Pero primero ellos deben llamarnos y como dijo Gerardo, no deben tener miedo. Ellos no tienen que hacer muchas investigaciones y llegar con todo su plan de resolver su problema. Ellos solamente tienen que entender qué es el problema y tener una conversación con nosotros. Y después, ellos van a llenar, tenemos un formulario que está en español, no sé cómo se llama, pero es un formulario de queja. Y si alguien nos llama, nos puede explicar cómo llenarlo. Y las preguntas son básicas, como su nombre, su apellido, dónde vive usted, cómo se llama la compañía en contra, quiere hacer su queja, y una explicación de lo que pasó. Y nosotros, todo depende de la situación. A veces podemos enviar una carta en ese caso, el vendedor de coches, o tal vez llamamos, y si vemos que mucha gente quiere su caso, quieren hacer un caso, quieren mandarles a la corte. Para hacer eso, tenemos que establecer ¿cómo se dice? Un pattern of practice.
Un protocolo.
Sí. Y tenemos que agregar las quejas que siguen las mismas. Bueno, eso es demasiado. Lo que tienen que saber es, pueden hacer una queja con nosotros y no tienen que saber la ley.
Correcto. O sea, una persona que diga, algo está mal acá, lo que me ofrecieron está incorrecto, me dijeron que iba a pagar $200 y me llegó el papel del banco y ahora me resulta que es 400. Entonces, eso es una forma de hacer un reclamo. Pueden hacer un reclamo sin temor a represalias. Porque hemos escuchado que algunos dealers, y yo no estoy hablando de todos, pero hay algunos que a la gente les amenazan porque saben de alguna forma su situación legal en este país y la gente tiene temor poder enfrentarlos y hacerlo frente. Y ahí es donde viene ese abuso. O sea, ¿en qué momento esos dealers, ya Jason nos explicó que ha habido casos donde se ha determinado el abuso, no solamente financiero, el abuso en muchos casos, y esos dealers han tenido que pagar sus penas, incluso con cierres. ¿Cómo un consumidor en este momento en Minnesota se va a sentir protegido? ¿Ustedes se aseguran que va a estar protegido? Porque eso creo que va a ser una pregunta válida.
Bueno, no podemos garantizar lo que va a pasar con cualquier queja que llega a nosotros. esperamos que podamos ayudar en cada situación. Y por esto tenemos un grupo que contesta cada llamada que llega a nosotros, porque si no es nosotros que puede ofrecer la ayuda, queremos dirigirles a los otros recursos que tienen. Por ejemplo, un vendedor de coches necesita tener una licencia, pero su licencia no viene de nosotros. Creo que es la Oficina de Trabajo e Industria o tal vez el Departamento de Transportación que ofrece esa licencia. Pero en cada situación tratamos de llegar a donde quieren llegar la persona que hizo su queja. A veces podemos llegar exactamente donde quieren. Quieren devolver la coche y en ese ejemplo sí. El vendedor dice que, ok, vamos a limpiar las manos, vamos a decir que puede devolver la coche y vamos a devolverle su dinero. A veces llegamos a un lugar en el medio y a veces no podemos ofrecer la ayuda que alguien espera. Lo que hacemos es el intento cada vez.
Perfecto. Perfecto, 𝐤𝐬. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Hemos tratado de que sea esto una entrevista bastante corta, y creo que no ha sido corta, pero mucha información. El Federal Commission, el abogado general, está para que los sirva a ustedes. Recuerden, tengan paciencia, las cosas no son de un día a otro. Y hay un tema que la gente me está preguntando, 𝐤𝐬, y yo creo que también puede ser, Jason nos puede contestar, es el caso del Banco Santander. El Banco Santander se probó que estaba cargando cargos extras en los intereses, y creo que los abogados generales creo que son 46 estados, decidieron hacer un settlement. Entiendo que el settlement está en proceso. ¿Quiénes? Yo creo que esto va a ir para Jason. Jason, I am talking about the Santander case. In the Santander case, we understand a lot of the consumer, the consumer affecting for this practice from Santander, they will get the money back. What is the process? What the consumer can do? Estoy hablando del problema de Santander. Santander hizo un settlement con 46 abogados generales, obviamente dirigido por el Federal Trade Commission, para que devuelvan dinero a sus clientes, porque detectaron que le estaban cargando intereses sumamente altos que no correspondían al score de esas personas. Y no solamente eso, sino que mucha gente perdió sus carros porque ya llegaron un momento que no podían pagar. Jason, can you explain to us about the Santander case? What the consumer can do, and what is the expectation for the next 12 months?
So I actually, I won't be able to talk much about the Santander case because the FTC was not actually involved in that case. I believe, if I'm remembering right, isn't it I think it was might have been the Connecticut Attorney General, along with many other.
Yeah, I think it's in the stage of. What I hear is 46 states. I know it's Minnesota, and it's just in the early stage to give the money. We don't know exactly. That's the reason why I was asking you. But as soon as we have that information, I will probably share with all the consumer, especially Latinos and African Americans who suffer for this kind of practice. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you for your service in such kind of job, because I know it's super hard to work defending the consumer. Gracias por el trabajo que están haciendo defendiendo a los consumidores, especialmente las minorías que son las más afectadas, y gracias por el trabajo. Muchas gracias a ustedes. If you want give another word to say bye, Jason, and 𝐤𝐬, and Gerardo.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for having us, and it was great speaking to you all.
Thank you. What about you,
Sí.
𝐤𝐬?
Gracias por invitarnos. Quiero repetir que si alguien aquí tiene una pregunta, tenemos en cada momento durante el día normal, tenemos 10 personas que están contestando las llamadas, y cualquier persona ahí, si ellos hablan español, pueden hablar con cualquier persona que habla español o habla inglés, todos. Y tenemos traductores, un servicio de traductores. Bueno, también, si tienen preguntas, lo que quiero decir es que nos llama.
Muchísimas gracias a ambos, y también Gerardo. Por algún motivo no lo podemos ver, Gerardo, las últimas palabras. Después de esto vas a tener miles. Muchísimas gracias, Gerardo. Vaya todos, nos vemos conmigo, será hasta la próxima semana con más información para la comunidad hispana, una comunidad fortalecida, es una comunidad que está educada financieramente, que esa es la idea de nosotros. Gracias a todos, muy buenas tardes.